Hi, I'm going to talk about agnostics in a poor light. South Park did an episode once with a family of radical agnostics. It was the finale of season 15, I believe. The plaque they have on the wall. We cannot know with certainty if God and Christ exist. They could. Then again, there could be a giant reptilian bird in charge of everything. Can we be certain there isn't? No, so it's pointless to talk about that one. Now, obviously, that was their way of responding to it. Sort of a second-guessed meta-complaint, or perhaps real complaints, that they've had to go at every religion, but they've never had to go at agnostics. And as we know, Matt and Trey identify as agnostics. So they're sort of going, this is what fundamentalist agnostics would be like. So absurd as to be comical, i.e. they don't exist. Agnosticism is intrinsically benign. But I disagree. I've mentioned before that to me, fundamentalist agnostic is the technical term for a hippie. Not just one who says, I don't know, but one who says, you don't know. In that inflection we all love. You don't know! You don't know anything! Knowledge is impossible! They'll claim this quite conveniently whenever they're losing an argument, which is always. Yet get onto one of their favourite subjects, like incense and Tai Chi and how awesome hair looks when it's fucked up, and every sentence out of their mouth is, I know! I know! I know! Yeah, you know. I like to remind you what a swamp of impossibility you're washing your ass in. Now, always, when talking online about agnosticism, the first thing I encounter is this Philosophy 101 definition that agnosticism is a position on knowledge where atheism is a position on belief. But that doesn't address what the agnostic person is trying to say, because people who call themselves agnostic use the word as an account of their beliefs. It's what they say when someone asks, what are you? You're right, they've misunderstood the root of the word in their attempts to explain their beliefs. But rather than just go, dickhead, you could try and examine what it is they're trying to say about the beliefs. If you actually listen to them, rather than just shoving a philosophical dictionary in their face and pissing between the pages, you'll usually find that underneath it all, what they're trying to say is, I believe in the principle that one cannot know whether there is a God. One, I, we, whatever. And that is the principle that I am going to attempt to dismantle and refute. Consider by square analogue. It's called a square analogue because it relates to itself in two dimensions. You'll see how. If I introduce you to a person, you've never met them before, you know nothing about that person, and for the sake of argument you have no visual cues, do you think that person is religious? No, you don't. Do you think that person is an atheist? No. Do you think they're agnostic? No, none of the above. You simply don't have a position on that person's religion. And you're confident enough with your innocence to admit that. That's how atheists are about God, for the most part. We've just been introduced to this universe, and we haven't yet had a shred of evidence what kind of religion it has, what kind of God it has, if any. You think that's agnosticism, don't you? You think an atheist is someone who, in this analogy, when meeting this new person, declares this person has no religion. That would be a gnostic atheist. People who are certain that there is no God. Those people are very, very rare, yet they're always the ones strawmanned into the argument to represent atheists on the whole. Most atheists mean by atheist exactly what atheism means to the letter. They do not have this belief. There's a world of difference between positively believing there is no God and simply not believing there is a God. The second is called implicit atheism, and it's what all babies have by default. One who says, or would say, I don't have a belief or a position on this person's religion, on this universe's God. I have received or processed no differential indication. A Christian is one who says, this person is clearly a Christian. It's not real, remember, it's a square analogue. The agnostic position, the one you hold so dear, is the one who says, I have no way of knowing this person's beliefs, this person's religion. That's the difference. An atheist doesn't know, but is open to finding out, to asking the person about their beliefs, to investigating the nature of the universe and the origin of the universe with an open mind. An atheist can believe progress can be made on any question whatsoever, even the existence of God, without ever holding a position on it. I know this is starting to sound exactly like what you call agnosticism, but that's what I'm saying. You probably are an atheist, you just don't like the word atheist because it's become a label with iffy connotations. Well, agnosticism is also a label. It's always been a label, and it has iffy denotations. It is irrational in its nuts and bolts. It is fractally wrong. If someone asks, do you think there's a God? I don't know is not the most open-minded answer. In fact, it might be the least, because you're avoiding the question altogether. The most open-minded answer to do you think there's a God is no but. The opposite of the first rule of improv, yes and. The first rule of philosophy is no but. Do I think there's a God? Whatever it is you're calling God, you have not yet given me any evidence for its existence, so no, but please expand. Now that's an atheistic position by definition, and it makes markedly more sense than I don't know. Because if someone asks, do you think there's a God? And rather than determine that what this particular person means by God is the yellow gremlin hanging from his cock made of unicorn hooves and four-sided triangles, you instead simply say, I don't know. You've rather embarrassingly misrepresented your intelligence, and you've done this mentally ill person no favours. It's important not to be gnostic about theism or atheism, but if you're saying to yourself, or to anyone else, I'm not an atheist, I'm an agnostic, what you're probably saying is you don't believe progress can be made on any God question. And that's enough to make you part of the crust that holds up the mantle of the moderately religious, who hold up the core of crazy radical nutjobs. You can be a fundamentalist agnostic. It only gets you crust deep, but you're still part of the problem. A four-sided triangle, by the way, is nothing compared with a being that is simultaneously all-knowing and all-powerful. That is logically impossible in any universe. Santa Claus is at least logically possible, if physically unfeasible. But if someone asks you if Santa Claus exists, is I don't know a reasonable answer? Of a fucking course not. What is the reasonable answer? No, but. Let's try and pull this back to something practical. When you're filling in a form, a census or something, and you write agnostic in the religion section, someone is going to fudge that data. They'll put you in a group called religious or spiritual, or they'll isolate the atheists and non-religious and say they're only 11%, implying that 89% are religious, but in fact maybe half put agnostic. Incidentally, for me, the preferred term, if and when a term is absolutely necessary, is non-religious every time. But I've seen some forms where atheist and non-religious are different boxes. This makes no sense at all. Agnostic, atheist, and non-religious should all be the same box. There only needs to be one question regarding religion, and that is, do you condone book abuse? I mean, child abuse by book. Consenting adults can abuse any book they like, but when you're raising a child, you sat there with it, reading it Roger Red Hat, you should stick to making sure the child is able to complete words and sentences and understand their meanings. When you go on to tell them that the book is written by the same person who created you, me, and the universe, and that if you don't act exactly like Roger Red Hat, you'll be burned forever, and that you must fight to the death anyone who opposes Roger Red Hat, then by golly gosh, I think you might be committing some fucking child abuse there. And I'm still just talking about Roger Red Hat. When you swap it out for a very long book about genocide, that, in my naive opinion, doesn't make it better, but even a smidge worse. I don't know why we define religious affiliation by metaphysics, by what a person believes about the possible existence of a mysterious higher power. If you ask me, we should be defining it on practical terms. When someone asks you if you're religious, they might as well be asking you, do you think it's okay to indoctrinate a child? Do you think it's acceptable to shove the big book of genocide in a kid's face and say, it's all true, read it or burn in hell? Is it okay to make it watch Prometheus and tell them it's all true? Is it okay to make them play a sim game and tell them it's all actually happening? That a civilization of billions is burning to the ground because of you and what you do with your fingers? And to that, your answer should not be, I don't know, or I have no way of knowing, or it depends on your culture. Your answer should be an emphatic, unambiguous, no! Fat red marker pen taking up the whole page. And then when it comes to the anything else we should know about you section, write, regarding the religious question, allow me to continue. And then you include a 30-page booklet that says, no, 116,000 times child abuse is not okay. The fact that billions of people engage in this kind of child abuse does not make it okay. And for a final thought, let's bring this back to Santa. I bet there are a lot of parents out there who would rather not lie to their children about magic, Skinnerian conditioning man, but they can't bring themselves to be the only ones on their street not to. But it's straight up intellectually dishonest emotional manipulation. Santa is child abuse. It really is. Jesus is even worse child abuse. And Muhammad, blessings and peace be upon him, is XXX rated child abuse. But as long as everyone's doing Santa, what can we possibly say against Muhammad, blessings and peace be upon him? I say fuck all the bullshit, clean, cut, none of the above. Not even Santa. Just give your child presents in a big sock. What's wrong with that? If you want to get them to be good, for goodness sake, do it without lying to them about magic, Skinnerian conditioning man. Because they might get it into their heads that good behaviour is best enforced by lies. And the more people who believe that, the truer it becomes. But then what does true even mean? At the point at which we're lying to each other more than we're telling the truth, language itself becomes more of a burden than a boon. It would be damaging our model of the universe, not enhancing it. Then society will well and truly shit itself out of itself. Perhaps it already has. That line in Santa Claus is Coming to Town, one of the darkest songs you've ever heard when you think about it. You better not pout or cry. Keep those emotions bottled up if you want your parents' love. No, it's the line, so be good for goodness sake. It's perhaps the creepiest, yet clumsiest example of irony in the history of the English language. You're not being good for goodness sake, you're being good for treats, for material gain. You're like a dog, pretending to be good, without ever understanding why or what it means to be good. Oh, come on, Mike. Santa's harmless fun. It's just harmless fun for the kids. What's the worst that could possibly happen? At least 10 generations and counting of Western people who've been Skinner box trained from the age of 2 to think of goodness as something you fake in order to get material possessions? I don't fucking know, do I? Goodbye. And fuck off.